There's no surprise today that only a few of us that we pay closer attention to the word truth. And of course that we understand that geopolitics is getting way more complicated and intricate on the daily basis. It's not just about what's happening every day in different countries, but mainly about the reasons that really led to those disasters. Looking back at American history, of course we know that no country is perfect. But we do need to ask the question, how far has the country come since 1776? And this year marked the 250th anniversary of America. It's a milestone and we're out to celebrate. But today, to be honest, we look at how the Trump administration is delegating the task and also the chaos around the world. It's rather disappointing. I'm sorry to be the first person, or perhaps even the only person, tell you this. Given the fact that today we're looking at, or we're still sadly following the war between U.S. and Iran. And of course, based on the report, regardless what sitting U.S. President Donald Trump has posted or tweeted, and however you want to call it, but there are something they still don't know or are not revealed to the public. And what about this relationship between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu? And what about this intention? And how about the threat from Iran at this moment? How do we understand the truth? Or even better yet, I dare to ask the question, how do we even understand what the Trump administration and also the report from the Israel side, are they really truthful and honest? And now today, we're about to find out the things that we don't know, but we should know about the war. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to invite our distinguished speaker, who is the Professor Avrum Burg. Professor Burg is a thinker and a writer and a peace activist. Professor Burg began his political career in the movement against the Lebanon War. He continued on to a long political career where he served in a variety of public positions, including in the Knesset as a member of the Labor Party, Speaker of the Knesset, and a chairman of the Jewish Agency. Well, Professor Burg, and welcome to The Missing Piece.
Pleasure, Will. Thank you for having me.
Well, Professor Burg, again, such an honor to have you on the show. Again, excuse me, I know that when I introduce you during the bio, I know that's not the complete description, because I know that by studying your work and be really learning about your leadership, you once held, I will say, one of the highest positions in the government. But we're going to get to that in a second. But let's talk about what's happening right now. Tragically speaking, the whole world continued to follow the war between U.S. and Iran. And despite what sitting U.S. President Donald Trump has said or posted on social media, that U.S. has completely liberated people of Iran or finished the job in Iran. But meanwhile, we know that's not the truth. So the first question I want to ask you, Professor, is what is your assessment regarding the messages that have been shared and posted through the social media by the sitting U.S. President Trump? And why do you think that today it looks like he's in urgency of sharing the news with the public instead of telling the truth? What do you say to that?
I have a feeling that this question of yours is not the last one for which I will say that the question is better than my answer. I don't know how it works in schools in China, but my teacher used to tell me, especially about mathematics, Avraham, if you understand the question, you already have 50% of the answer. So I always had 50% of the answers, but I never had the full answer because I understood the questions. Having said that, I will say that maybe here, in order to give a fair and a decent answer, we need patience that neither Israelis nor Americans have. And this is to wait a long term into the future in order to look back and to understand the nowadays. Because from here and now, contemporary, actual messages and manipulations and news and fake news and information and manipulated information, it's very obscure, very, very difficult to understand. So let's try to separate what we know to what we suspect. We know that public was never exposed to the real goals and the ends of the war, neither in Israel nor in America. So one day it was toppling the regime. The other day it was about the nuclear threat. The other day it was about the enriched uranium. Another day it became Hormuz Hormuz Strait. So we don't really know, because each and every day the mission is changed. Yet, so this is, we know, we have missions that are playing musical chairs every day, a new mission, every day a new achievement, every day a new disappointment. Behind this, behind the curtains, behind the veil of and misinformation, we know that something is emerging. And what emerges is a new regional and a new world order. Whatever we knew about the regional and the world order up until a month ago, maybe up until 3 years ago in October 7th, is not there anymore. And one of the things that Trump tries to do is to redesign the world order the way he wants it, rather than the way other forces try to design it. And I'll just give you one example. Just one example, which is, you'll tell me, Avram, it's a conspiracy. I tell you, maybe. You tell me it's a fact of life. I tell you, will do me a favor and prove it, because I have an instinct for it. I don't yet have any information for it. At the last summit meeting between President Xi and President Trump was actually surprised by President Xi, who played the card of rare earth minerals and telling him, see, we, the Chinese, we are having 90% of all the minerals you need. And he didn't have an answer for it. So when I think about Venezuela and then the Iranian oil, I say to myself, maybe he wants to come to the next meeting, which was just delayed and postponed, and saying to President Xi, you have the minerals, I suffocate you by the oil, in order to have a different equilibrium, a new equilibrium. This way or that way, the world order is not anymore the one we knew after Second World War, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and after the 90s, which was the American era. It's a new world order, poly-centered, many new players, and one bully. And one bully is America.
Well, Professor Burg, it's fascinating that while I listen to how you explain the so-called grand strategy, or even the strategy under Trump administration, two words that caught my attention. One thing is the word called manipulation. And let's dive into a little bit deeper. Because we know that today, again, you're the expert. I am looking at even an article that you published earlier at the beginning of March. It says, I won't remain silent on this cynical war. Of course, everyone knows that you're referring to the war between Iran and America, to the context. But when we look at this word manipulation, especially from this diplomatic or political way, what is your assessment about Benjamin Netanyahu and the sitting U.S. President Donald Trump? Because remember, keep in mind that during Trump's first term, that he boldly claimed, again, Jerusalem, it's the capital of Israel. That was a milestone. That's a celebration, to the Christian community or even to the entire evangelical community. And since then, everyone's within the community start to assume that relationship between Bibi and Trump, it's growing deeper and deeper. But we know that today, when we look at Trump and when we look at how he delegates international affairs, there has to be another word. It's called a reciprocity. So tit for tat deal. So Professor Burg, from your perspective, what is your assessment of Trump and Bibi at this moment? Is it manipulation in the system, in the structure, coalition to attack Iran, or it's about reciprocity? But if so, how do we understand that? Go ahead, Professor.
Unfortunately, I'm not a professor because I'm a well-learned person. I'm a professor because I'm teaching in universities. So I'm a good teacher. I'm not at all sure that I am a good one to develop knowledge. Okay. Having said that, I will say let me be a teacher for a second. Okay, Will, just for a
Absolutely.
second. I don't remember any moment in human history in which manipulation was not there. I mean, when you read the Chinese philosophers, you read the Western philosophers, when you read the Buddhist one, the Jewish one, the Muslim one, there is always a tricky world there. How to prepare, how to go this way, how to go that way, how to create an illusion that your enemy will think you go there, but actually you mean that. It was always there, this Machiavellian thinking. I think that one thing we have to pay attention nowadays is that whatever used to be done in the past, behind the veil, behind the curtain, in smoke-filled rooms, in darkness, whispered as a secret from one to another, now because of social media, now because the availability and the accessibility of everything, whatever used to be behind the curtains became the curtains. Now everything is out in the open, and everybody says, "Whoa, this is how you make sausages?" I'm going to become a vegetarian. I don't like it. But between me and you, it was always there. So the first thing is, let's be very nice and be polite to the manipulators. Unfortunately, neither Netanyahu nor Trump invented anything significant. Maybe they improved it, maybe they use it better, maybe they perfected it, but they are not innovators. There were people before them doing that. Having said that, I will say that yes, two things to look into when I dive deep into your question. The first is the profile of nowadays leadership, which is very, very interesting because we don't have one model of leadership, of course. We never had. But at least in what used to be the liberal democratic West, leaders answered to parliaments, leader gave report and were accountable to the public. Leaders have had to behave with some reason. And when you look at Trump and you look at Netanyahu, you know there are no democratic commitment behind it. There is no liberal consideration behind it. There is no real value system behind it, which is about the goodness, about the collective good. It is personal gain and personal ego and personal achievement and consideration. So you can say that in a very, very sad way, the kind of model presented to the public by Netanyahu, by Trump, by Viktor Orban in Hungary, by Putin in Russia, and few others around the world, it's not anymore a leadership which is the top of the structure of public will. It's a leadership which is its own needs and its own motivation and its own ego trip, regardless of what's good for the people or what's right from a historical point of view. The second thing is the relationship between Netanyahu and Trump. This is not something for somebody who has a profession which begins with P, like professor, which is, or politician. It's for a psychologist, which also begins with a P, though you do not hear it. I mean, something is sick there. The kind of spell that Netanyahu has on this American president, that the way he can, I will be very soft, he can persuade him. I do not want to say manipulate, I do not want to say puppeteer. I will say persuade him to take this action rather than that action is persuasive. The second is, how comes that so many American presidents saw in history the Israeli prime minister as the kind of the wise man, the elder brother or sister. It was Clinton and Rabin. It was George W. Bush and Olmert. It was Nixon and Golda Meir, and there were many others. And there it goes to the deeper relationship between certain element in American identity and psyche and certain elements in the Israeli political system and ideological drivers. When you understand this, you understand the symbiosis. These two, who are, I will say, in our generation, the most persuasive, some will say magician, I will say deceivers, who are self-centered, ego-driven leaders, really redefine the American term, it takes one to know one. They know each other so well before, during, and up until now, and they know how to feed the needs of each other. So by the end of the process, it's a win-win for them, though it is lose-lose for the rest of us.
You know, Professor Burg, it's wow. I mean, what a profound way that to demonstrate or even to analyze this intricate relationship, because every day, I mean, again, I work in the media field and I've been a journalist for 10 plus years. But again, as soon as the war broke out between US and Iran, and we are seeing this image, or should we say unstoppable description between America and Israel. And under Benjamin Netanyahu, one thing that I want to make crystal clear to our audience, and this is something that, again, unique about you, Professor Burkitz, as I mentioned, you refuse to be silent on the truth. And of course that today, there's another matter. It's about how Benjamin Netanyahu, or even how the Israeli administration today, handling the criticism. This is something fundamentally, I have to say, as a journalist, it's offensive to me. Because I believe that it is our job to tell the truth and reveal the truth. You know, again, Professor, I've never been a lawyer before. But I know that when you are held accountable in the court, that anyone is obligated to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And that really drove me to the media to be a journalist in the first place. But again, today, when we are looking at the war, when we're looking at Bibi administration, I dare to ask the question, Professor, why is the way handle criticism in a disappointing way? So in other words, what about this whole silence of the criticism from the side of Benjamin Netanyahu? Because again, we know that Donald Trump doesn't take criticism very well either. You know, we've seen that attack the media, crown the lead media, label the media in different ways. But again, to my surprise, what is the complication for Bibi to handle the criticism, even though at this point the war continues? Why is that? What is happening today? Your thoughts?
We are a nation of 9 million Israelis, 10 million Israelis, give or take. You are a nation of billion, 0.2, 0.3. How much an average Chinese is exposed to the English or French or German criticism against China in the world media? Something like zero. Now imagine most of Israelis, like most of Chinese, we speak Hebrew only, we read Hebrew media only, we read Hebrew books only, we listen to podcasts and news feeds in Hebrew only. And somehow, even before anything else, world criticism is filtered because it is not in a language we speak or exposed to. Which, by the way, you know how much criticism was aimed towards China in the last 20 years about various events.
Of course.
Very, very little of it really got into the minds and the conscience and the awareness of the average Chinese in the street. The second goes with a smile. You know that when Donald Trump divorced from Elon Musk, he established his own social media. What he calls it? Truth.
The Truth Social. Yep.
So somehow truth is not any more fact-based reality. It's an interpretation. So they have their own interpretation. And they have their own followers who are post-reason people and post-logic people and not scientifically proven people who say, well, we buy this interpretation rather than that interpretation. And it happens, by the way, in so many places around the world as a kind of, and this is a different conversation between you and me, maybe, which I'll be more than happy to do, about what happened to the West that was based on reason since Immanuel Kant of the last hundreds of years, and all of a sudden is walking away from logic and walking away from reason and into a new sphere. The Trump and Netanyahu are only some expressions of it. The last but not least is as follows, and this is at least about Israel. I cannot give any testimony about America and DC, though I'm teaching in DC and I know the city quite well. But about Israel, regardless of the war, Iran is a real issue. It's not a real issue just for Israelis because the Iranian regime took a vow to eliminate Israel. It's an issue challenging the entire setting of the region. They challenge the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, the Egyptians, the North Africans, the Jordanians, the entire Sunni world, the Israelis, the West. So there is an issue there. And when you have such an entity which is so hostile to so many elements, and they pinpointed Israel as the top or the tip of their hostility and took a vow to eliminate it. And there is a huge digital watch in the center of Tehran, counting back the days till Israel was fully eliminated. Many Israelis, maybe they don't like the war, maybe they don't like the prime minister, but they say, wow, if we're already involved and engaged and our prime minister succeeded somehow to bring Donald Trump, the bully of the world, into this, we are ready to suffer a little bit more in order to remove this pain, in order to remove this nuisance, in order to remove this existential threat. So what I'm saying is, first, truth is not an objective matter anymore. The second, what I'm saying is, for Israelis, it's an opportunity to remove a pain, to throw away a stone in your shoe, and to walk lightly with less pain. Does it justify? No. Does it really give credit, from my point of view, to the crimes and evilness and wrongdoings of Netanyahu? Definitely not. But at the same time, I understand my public.
Professor Burg, I have two more questions before letting you go. Let's talk about another critical concept as we continue to follow the updates, which is dear to my heart, the word democracy. And we know that today, probably you're getting tired of answering all the questions about interpretation of democracy for Israel, and what about, the future of democracy, and also look back the political polarization of the states and, and also the countries in Europe. And so again, even before crafting the question, when it comes to democracy, I wanted to be careful because, again, based on your experiences in leadership back in the 2000s, that you serve as an interim president. I have to say that was a crucial period, and that was almost the turning point. So from your perspective, as someone who used to serve in the government as one of the highest of positions, and look at what's happening right now again, tied to what you said, truth, it's not based on facts today. Truth is based on interpretation, which threatening, daunting, and it's terrifying to all of us. So again, Professor Burg, I want you to help us with better understanding. Where does the nation of Israel stand when we talk about democracy? And what about, again, going back to recent comments that you mentioned, there's no illusion about Tehran. There's no illusion about what's happening in Iran. It's devastating. But again, from your perspective, what about the word democracy today? And what about the whole tied into this whole democratic system? Liberate the people of Iran and serve, the greater interest of the world. What are your thoughts?
It's many questions compassed into one. As much as I have a will for the world to be a better world and for the political system to present the people and represent the people, its own population, in a much better way that it does today, I have no illusions and I have no motivation to impose my way of thinking on others. I might have my own reservations, I might have my own questions, I might have my own suggestions, but I can talk about my society. Israel, up until a while ago, was a liberal democracy, not a perfect one. We have issues with the Palestinians in the occupied territories that we do not give them full democratic rights, etc. But it was a kind of a democracy in deficit, but it was a liberal democracy. What is a liberal democracy? There are many definitions. Let's use one here for the sake of this classroom, okay? And I would say democracy in our case was the expression of the will of the majority. And liberal was the protection of the one. Because we know from so many other manifestations in history that there is always a potential for the tyranny of the majority. So in order for the majority not become tyrant over minority groups or minority opinions, you need the equilibrium between majority expressed by democracy and liberal values that protect the freedoms and the liberties of the one. And in between, you have a balanced system. I run away from this and I'll come back to it in a second. In the 90s, you spoke about it, 2000, that was already the turn of the century. But in the 90s, that was the century in which the liberal democratic order of America was the dominant only narrative in the world. Soviet Union collapsed. Nothing yet took over. China was not as prominent and dominant as it is today. Neither was India. And the American world order was the world order, so much so that Francis Fukuyama, when he wrote about the end of history, it didn't mean that the story is over. He meant the liberal democratic system won over. That's the best one. That's it. We don't have to look further. And what Americans tried to do in a very, very, you can say naive, I can say childish way, tried to impose their value system top down on places that were not ready bottom up to accept it. When they invade Iraq, Iraq never went through the 300-400 years of the West, departing from the church, developing their concepts of reason, the notion of nation state, the democratic notions, the freedoms and the liberties of the one. They never went through the French and the British and the industrial and the American revolutions. And when you come overnight, George W. Bush, and impose your Washington system on Iraq, it's doomed to fail. When you, President Obama, a decade and some later, come to Cairo and give a beautiful speech, but it's a beautiful speech for Chicago. It's not a beautiful speech for Cairo. It's a different existential experience. So America failed so many times with this childish thought that we can impose our liberal system on others, that nobody wants to look at it anymore. Let's move onwards a second. 2008, that was a huge economic crisis all over the world, subprime in America and others in Europe. Both Washington and Brussels, the two capitals of the West, failed to deal honestly and decently with this crisis. And therefore, new models of regime raised. The Chinese one, which is a fascinating one we're not going to address now, the Russian Putin one, and the illiberal one of Erdogan and Orban, and later on Netanyahu and Trump. And therefore, the liberal democratic world order is not there anymore. At least it is withdrawing and in defense. And the same in Israel. What took over the place in Israel, now we'll come back to our reality, are two kinds of new notions. First, a very, very prominent authoritarian individual who is ready to eradicate all the achievements of the state for the sake of his personal gain. And the second is the rise of religious fundamentalism. The state is not secular anymore. The state is not equal to all citizens anymore. And the state is not democratic for all.
Well, I mean, again, Professor, you're right. You're 100% right. We're living in a different period of time. I mean, so much have happened. I want to wrap up our conversation. It's a simple question. But again, it's closer to my heart, closer to our Christian community. How can we pray for this country? I mean, I know... Sorry?
Israel or China?
Israel. How can we pray for the nation of Israel? I mean, again, I'm sure, Professor, that you have been invited to different international occasions to talk about the world peace, to talk about the global order, to talk about, how perhaps that God will pick a next person to save the country of any country on the world map. But today, for this episode, as we are looking at the war between US and Iran, and again, that's why I genuinely, sincerely want to ask the question, sir, it's how can we pray for the nation of Israel? Because we know it's crucial, we know it's critical, but the current political structure, the current intricacy of the manipulation, it's not really working. I dare to say it's not working well. So again, Professor, I want to end our conversation by asking the last question. As a believer, as a Christian, as someone truly care about the future of humanity, how can we pray for the nation of Israel? Your final thoughts.
Well, I would like to circumvent your question a little, and instead of answering how to pray, I will try to answer what to pray.
Absolutely.
How is simple? You go to church, you go to synagogue, you go to shrine, you go to a mosque. What do you do there?
Yes.
But what should be the content of the prayer?
Yes.
And I would like to wish my country two contents that are not part of the agenda, neither the political nor the spiritual agenda of the society. The first is, I love Israel to live up upon the standard it sets for itself. The standard of peace and just society and reconciliation, and not doing to the other what we hated to be done unto us. Just what we promised ourselves to be. And we betrayed our own vision and our own destiny. Not what others are judging us, not others who evaluate us with us. And the second, maybe you'll smile, maybe you'll say, I'm out of my deep water. I think that part of what we witness now in Tehran and in the region is a clash, the first clash of the monotheistic fundamentalist war. It's Jewish fundamentalism with Christian fundamentalism versus Muslim fundamentalism. This is a very, very complicated reality altogether at the battlefield, and each and every one of us at home, in Washington, in Jerusalem, and in Tehran or Gaza, or wherever it happens. And I wish for this torn apart monotheistic realm to have a little infusion of Confucian thinking, patience, structure, and tolerance. We need a little bit this. I mean, only did we have in AliExpress some Confucian commodities to supply in order to pacify a little bit the zealots and the fanatics of the region, I would have bought a container.
Well, again, Professor, with that prayer, with the core values that you share with us, such an honor to have you on the show. Again,
Pleasure, Will. It's fantastic. It's an honor for me.
No, sir, it's a great pleasure. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to Professor Avrum Burg. Again, Professor Burg, it's a thinker, it's a writer, a peace activist. And he continued on his political career where he served in a variety of public positions over the years. And I strongly encourage everyone go online to connect with Professor Burg. Again, Professor, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
and we love to have you back on the show to elaborate and continue our conversation. Thank you.
Thanks a million, my dear.